Well, hello guys, welcome back. Today we're going to continue with this series talking more so about really what it means to train in my opinion a pretty efficient way. Now, this is something that we kind of touched upon a little bit, I believe, in the previous two videos. And if you recall from the previous two videos, if you watch those, we started getting into more so like an introduction about what my philosophy is with going to the gym and fitness, and especially if people are getting started, how to really go about that process, more so with like how to actually stay committed, right? But for today, where my mind kind of went with, the next topic that we're going to be talking about, something top of mind really when I woke up this morning, I thought about really what the fundamentals are when it comes to how to actually train properly. I feel like it's something that would be really cool to discuss, at least in my opinion. Again, by no means am I a professional health whatnot. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a doctor. I'm not anything of that sort. I'm not certified. You know what I'm saying? So take everything that I say with a grain of salt. I just know what works for me. I've been doing this for a few years now, so I've been able to see and experiment with what works, what doesn't work, and there's a ton of information out there, especially on YouTube, with how to actually train. Some of it, in my opinion, is not the greatest, but others, it's actually pretty good. And so I want to go ahead and kind of share what I found, what works for me, and really what I'm doing right now. I feel like with me at this point, there's always things that you can kind of pick up and learn with anything, right? You slowly evolve over time with what you actually think is right or wrong within a certain subject. But when it comes to like fitness and training, I feel like I've gotten a good understanding of what is good information and what is BS, at least with like the fundamentals, right? Again, with things that worked for me and some things that haven't worked for me, these are all pieces of information that I've kind of gathered over time. So I just kind of want to share, what I actually think is good information. So first and foremost, I guess a little bit of backstory. Uh, I believe probably like 4 or 5-ish years ago now is how long I've been going to the gym. But really, in all of that time, especially really just in like the first 2 or first 3 years, although I kept coming back, my training was not efficient at all, in my opinion. It took me a while to get results that shouldn't have taken me that much, right? If that makes any sense. What I mean by that is there was an initial period about like the first, again, like 1 to 2, maybe 3-ish years, where I just started getting into the gym, learning the fundamentals of, how to do some of these movements like the bench press, the squat, the deadlift, some of the more basic but really fundamental movements to everything, in my opinion. And in that process of me trying to learn those things, there were, when it came down to like a schedule or some sort of, I guess a schedule would be a best way to put it, some sort of routine or schedule for me to follow. With what I know now, at the time, there were definitely a lot of weeks where I would either overtrain, undertrain, or just focus on really the wrong exercises. A lot of the exercises out there, I'm not gonna lie, especially if you go on TikTok or if you're on Instagram, a lot of people with large followings have a lot of exercises that, in my opinion, are pretty BS. They're exercises that might look cool and that are flashy, but realistically, they don't promote that much muscle growth. And so, not so much for this video, but I think in the next one or the next few, I'm actually going to go into depth with what my current schedule is right now with how I train. And I'm going to walk you guys through like why I chose the exercises that I chose, because everything in that schedule is very intentional. Um, like I've said before, I like to live a very balanced lifestyle. The gym isn't something that consumes my life, it's just something that I do on the side. So if I miss a day or two, and you'll see in the schedule when I go ahead and talk about it, it is not the end of the world. I just pick it right back up the next day. And it allows me to also get multiple breaks throughout the week. And that's something that I really didn't do when I initially started. But we'll talk about that here in a sec with some of the mistakes that I made. But just a little bit foreshadowing of what the next couple of videos might look like when it comes to a schedule. So, like I was saying, the first 1 to 2 years, it was just more so learning the fundamentals. But because of that, because I really knew nothing about the gym at all, I really just tried to absorb as much content as I could. But like I said, a lot of the content out there isn't that good. But again, I didn't know any better. So, some of the mistakes that I made pretty early on, first and foremost, is the amount of rest that I actually gave myself for the gym. There were a couple of times, a couple of weeks where I thought more would be better, right? There'd be some burst of energy or some motivation that I would get, and I'd want to go to the gym pretty much every single day and do something, even if I didn't necessarily have anything, on my schedule. Say, for instance, I just went ahead and kind of finished up the 4 day or 5 day program that I had for the week, but I still wanted to go. I would still go and do some sort of weight training. Now, the problem with that, although it might seem good on paper to get in more volume, the issue with that is when you're dealing with weights, really with any sort of physically demanding type of activity, over time, your body will try to build itself in such a way to perform better for next time. What I mean by that is, say, for instance, you're doing any sort of weight training, your natural response to your body is you're going to want to build muscle so you can go ahead and handle that stress that you've been putting on your body, recently. The issue is that period in which you are building that muscle, in which you're repairing your muscles so that you come back stronger for next time, that process takes time. And if you go ahead and repeatedly just beat your body over and over by continuously going to the gym while it's going through that recovery process, you are really going to hinder that recovery process. So you're not going to grow, or you're not going to recover as best as you potentially could. When it comes down to training, really in general, regardless of age group or what your goals are, in my opinion, the fundamental, or my philosophy when it comes to going to the gym, and this is applicable to everyone, should be being better than last time, or the last time. So being better than the last time. So what that means is, whether that's going for another repetition, whether that's increasing the weight slightly, whether that's taking fewer rest times between your sets. These are things that you can do in your next exercise to make it that much harder as the previous. And that's really how you allow your body to grow. If you're doing the same exact thing over and over and over again, your body isn't going to be exposed to new stress. And really, that's just the natural response of building muscle. You build muscle because you're putting your body through a healthy, right? A healthy amount of stress. So when you're weight training, your ultimate goal should be to do better than the previous, the previous time you went. So say, for instance, if, this today, say for instance, today I'm going to go ahead and go do some squats, right? Some barbell squats. And last week I did the same thing, right? I went ahead and did barbell squats, but maybe I could only do 135 pounds, so one plate on each side. Maybe I could only do 135 pounds for a set of 7. Today, my goal should be maybe to try to go for 8, right? Or 9 if it's possible. Right, so trying to find some way for you to make it harder than last time. Not so much thinking, oh, I'm just going to try to go for 7, or not even thinking about what weight you're going to be using for today. Your goal for today should be seeing, okay, I did barbell squat last time. How did I do last time? I did 135 on each, I did 135 in total for a set of 7. Today, let me see if I can do a little bit more. Again, maybe 8 repetitions or 9 repetitions. Or maybe do 7 repetitions again, but maybe fix your form slightly. Maybe your form is still something that you're trying to work on. So if you improve your technique, that is making some sort of improvement, right? So you're still making improvements. And over time, those little adjustments that you'll make, whether that's in your technique, with the weight that you're putting up, with the fewer rest times, that's going to accumulate and add up over time so that you will not only increase the weight that you're using in all of these exercises, but again, in turn, you're going to be building muscle because of that. So that is something that for me personally, I didn't really understand until about year 2 to 3, if I'm being 100% honest. When I went to the gym, I knew that yes, I would try to, I would try to see if I could maybe go for some heavier weight or try to find some way to improve slightly, but it wouldn't be something that would honestly be top of mind of every single exercise, or every single session that I had. Sometimes I would literally just go and just do the same thing that I did last week or 3 weeks prior, even though I could do a little bit more. I probably could have. I was just either lazy or didn't put in that much effort. Intensity, when it comes to muscle growth, is going to be your best friend. If you are training with intensity, you are going to be able to do more and more and more as long as you're sleeping well and eating well. You are going to be able to do more and more and more. It's not going to be very quick, especially later on, but you're going to be able to do more and more and more as long as you are training with intensity. So trying your absolute hardest is going to be what really allows you to, make sure that you build up that muscle and really just be progressing over time, because that should be the ultimate goal for everyone. And I know that there could be a variety of different reasons, and there could be a couple of different either demographics or in terms of like age or goals or whatever it might be. But ultimately, I feel like that philosophy of training harder than last time is applicable to anybody. That might look a little bit different for each individual person, but that philosophy, that fundamental philosophy, in my opinion, is pretty much applicable to everyone. I might not, if I were to give a recommendation, I might not recommend the same exercises to a, I don't know, 18-year-old as opposed to like someone who's in their 60s or 50s, especially if at that age, maybe they've had some issues in certain areas, so they can't do some of the exercises as opposed to a younger person. That is something that is just very realistic, something that is common in, in modern day. So because of that, I wouldn't really recommend you to do the same exercises, but that same philosophy of training harder than last time is still going to be applicable, even to that person that's in the older age group. Again, it might not be the easiest, or not easiest, but it might not be the fastest thing that happens. Maybe you're only able to progress a little bit each week, or maybe every 2 weeks, but the core idea of progressing is going to be your best friend, right? So that's really the fundamental philosophy that I kind of wanted to talk about, because once I've started to really put that into my own training, my results skyrocketed. They progressed way, or there was just so much progression in terms of like just my overall muscle growth. Um, in from years 3 to 4 or 4 to 5, I made so much progress, and it was way quicker overall than the progress that I made from years 1 to 3, right? So that's not, me trying to say that, I regret that, because everything that I've done is just it's just helping me be a better athlete in that sense. But if someone can avoid those mistakes, that would be obviously better, right? Because you're trying to do these things as fast, but also as healthy as possible, right? That's also another important part to this. So, yeah, that was really the first kind of fundamental mistake that I went ahead and kind of fixed over time. Like I said, more so years 3 to 4. The other part to that is rest. Like I said, I'll talk about what my schedule when it comes to going to the gym looks like in case anyone wants some pointers or tips. That that schedule is just something that, I follow. I'm not saying that I recommend everyone to follow it by any means. It's just what works for me, and it keeps me happy, and it's helping me achieve some of my goals. But I'll talk about that when we get to it. But one thing that I've done in that schedule that you'll see is I really took into consideration rest time. Like I mentioned, right, rest is going to be your best friend as well. You're not going to be able to make gains if your nutrition or your sleep isn't that great. It doesn't have to be perfect by any means, but for the most part, you should be pretty conscious of what you're doing in those two areas in terms of how can I maximize or be the most efficient, in both of those two areas. So, first and foremost, when it comes to just overall rest, um, making sure that I get my 7 to 8 hours of sleep, I feel like that's going to be universally probably the most recommended amount of sleep for everyone, right? As you've probably seen online, some people can get away with a little bit less, some people will need a little bit more. But on average, I feel like that's probably for the most part what everyone needs, 7 to 8 hours. So as hard as it might be, I feel like for me, with all the things kind of going on, there are some times where I want to stay up or, do things later in the night because I am naturally just more of a night owl. I'm not so much of an early person, but I do know that that will impede with my progress. If you are not getting enough sleep, you're not allowing your body to recover as well. And also, you are going to be exhausted the next day, so you're not going to be able to perform as well in the gym. So it's kind of hurting you in two different areas, two really important areas, right? So you can do all that you want with training. You can have the most perfect training program out there, but if you're not sleeping well, your body isn't going to be able to make much recovery. So that's going to be something that's super, super important, making sure that you guys get at least, 7 to 8 hours of sleep, making sure that you just feel well rested in the morning when you wake up. And nutrition. So nutrition is also another mistake where I kind of try to experiment with a couple of things, but all in all, I feel like the fundamentals are going to be applicable to everyone. Now, nutrition is a little bit more of a complex topic because depending on what your goals are, some people really want to just try to maintain their same weight. Um, Others are going to want to either lose weight or gain weight. For me, the issue that I've had pretty much my entire life up until now was always just being too heavy. So finding ways to try to lose weight would be pretty much my main goal when it came to nutrition. But in general, right, nutrition, it doesn't have to be very complicated. I feel like a lot of people out there are trying to sell you some type of BS nutrition program or pill or some sort of supplement or something just to get you to buy their product that is promising you to either lose weight, gain weight, or whatever. It doesn't have to be that complicated. I feel like the majority of people know what good and bad foods are, what makes you feel good, and what foods don't make you feel good, right? So for me, that was something even at my like unhealthiest, I knew like, yeah, maybe pizza, 4 days out of the week isn't the best idea. That it's just using common sense, right? Again, I feel like a lot of people already know this type of stuff, so it doesn't necessarily need to be stated online. But using common sense is really going to be just the best thing for most people when it comes down to nutrition. The thing that you will have to mostly think about is going to be your caloric intake. Um, so for me, throughout the week, I am definitely like a food person. I like my treats. I like, these pizzas and whatnot. But for the most part, throughout the week, I eat foods that aren't filled with a ton of oils, fats, things that I know generally maybe I shouldn't be eating this every single day, right? So a lot of the food that I eat is just food that comes from the house, right? I'm not too much someone that eats out a lot. If I am going to eat out, it's probably going to be more so towards the weekend or something like that. So maybe it's only like 1 or 2 meals or 1 or 2 times, maybe three a week. So that's just generally how I kind of keep that. For me, the more important thing that I think about is caloric intake. So if I'm ever going through a period where I want to maintain the same weight, then I'm looking to eat, you know, that maintenance amount of calories. Calories and how to calculate all that information, I feel like would be a good video for next time, because that's kind of a subject on its own. And definitely, if there's people out there struggling to see, you know, how do you calculate these things? Why do calories matter and all that? I feel like that deserves a video on its own. So kind of something more so for me to kind of think about for a future video. But just to keep it short, calories are going to be the main thing that you're going to be thinking about when you're trying to make some sort of weight adjustment, right? If you're trying to lose weight or gain weight, calories is going to be the number that is going to really determine if that happens to you or not. Now, how you get your calories, again, where we were talking about what I wanted to talk about today, that's also going to be, you know, an important part to this, right? So your nutrition, you know, what good foods you're having, what bad foods you're having. Again, just use your common sense. I mean, maybe you shouldn't be having pizza 4 days out of the week. Maybe you should maybe do some cooking at home, eat some steak, cook up some potatoes. These are foods that are generally more nutritious. And again, you don't need a nutritionist to tell you this. A lot of it is just common sense. So making sure that your nutrition is doing, you know, you're doing a good job on nutrition is going to be important. Now, when I say a good job, what does that mean? Again, just using common sense throughout the week. Maybe don't eat out as much. Maybe try to cook all of your meals at home, and staying away from things that are very processed, maybe going more towards fruits and vegetables. Sugars aren't a bad thing, carbohydrates aren't a bad thing. There's a lot of diets out there also that I'm not really a fan of. In my opinion, the best diet is going to be just whatever diet works for you. So if you like to eat meat, then try to incorporate a lot of, and that's going to help you with your protein, to build muscle. Try to incorporate a couple of different meals that have meat throughout the day. If you really like pasta, carbohydrates are not a bad thing. Again, try to find a way for you to cook some pasta and, you know, keep it not so, you know, processed with the ingredients that you're using. Again, just using common sense with that. So you can still enjoy the foods that you like, but a lot of the things that maybe are bought in terms of like fast food or restaurants, those are things that are really, really spiked up with a lot of fat, and just they're not too great for you overall. You know, if you want to be more in control with what you're eating, or if you just want to generally be more safe with, you know, eating good foods, probably cooking at home is going to be your best option. I know it can get a bit pricey, but if for some people, because I've known it, and I've known some people in the past to do this, there are some things out there for you to order when it comes down to like meal prepped meals that are healthy, so that you don't necessarily have to go ahead and do that cooking. It just gets shipped to you, but that's a bit more on the pricier side, so I wouldn't really resort to that. I would really just say cook at home, right? So again, training, recovery, sleep, nutrition, those are going to be pretty much the fundamental things to really make sure that you are going to be improving in the gym. But really encompassing all of this, and where I kind of wanted to end the video for today, is when it comes down to training, training harder than last time is really what's going to set you up for success. So again, when you're going to your next training session, making sure that, hey, how can I go ahead and make this exercise a bit harder? Maybe that's by adding one repetition. Maybe that's by doing a little bit more weight. And if you can't memorize this information, something that I personally do right now, I definitely recommend people to log this information, because it's something that you can't forget, especially if you're going a couple of times throughout the week. So, you know, it could be something as simple as either using the Notes app on your phone or just writing it down. I personally write my things down nowadays. It's just something that I like to do. It's what I prefer. So after I go ahead and, you know, go through one of my sessions, I come back home and just write down what I just did. And then that way, for next time, I can look at that and say, okay, you know, this is what I did last time. I have it written down, so you know, it's not anything that's forgotten. Let me see if I can do a little bit more for each of these exercises that I've did, or that I once did. So yeah, I feel like those are really the fundamentals. If there's any questions that anyone has, feel free to put them in the comments. But really, that's the main kind of topic for today, is just, you know, there's some things that you can do, and we'll cover them in the upcoming videos, like nutrition, what my schedule looks like and why it's the way it is. But the fundamental, really, philosophy when it comes down to training that's going to be applicable to everyone, again, making sure that you're just training harder than the previous time. All right. So appreciate you tuning in, and I'll go ahead and catch you guys next time. Peace, guys.